Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast Live, special college football edition right before the big Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame versus Georgia. And joining me, of course, to discuss college football is the Format Podcast official college football analyst, former Fighting Illini, former Indianapolis Colt, former Ottawa Red Black, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, former Saskatchewan Rough Rider. There we go. Might be missing one, but I think I got him.
BC, did you say BC Lion?
I always forget the BC Lion.
That was the last one. It was out there. It was a good time though. Good time out there.
Doubt.
We're glad to be talking college
stories about BC, man. No doubt. It's my guy Ryan Langford, former Division I wide receiver, kick return specialist, NFL and Canadian Football League. What's good, Ryan? Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Glad to see the new year. So
yes, cool. That's always a blessing.
Excited for 2025. College football has been looking good this end. So it's off to a good start.
Yeah, I tell you what, this has just been amazing, man. The bowl games, the college football playoff, everything. The only thing that sucks about it, the only thing is that the closer we get, we know it's about to be over. And the college football off season is so long, man. By the time August and rolls around, I'm hurting, man. It's so long because I love this sport so much, and I know you do too, more than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Having been there and done that, I know you get all the nostalgia and the feelings and all of that. So, man. Happy holiday season for you.
Yeah, good holiday season. Actually, awesome. we went to the Illinois Bowl game when they took care of it.
And we're gonna talk about that. Yes, sir.
So we went down there. So that was fun. I'll be honest, that was an exciting environment. I hadn't been to an Illinois game since the last bowl game, but I don't know if it was just South Carolina or what. But it was loud in there. It was rowdy in there. It was a good game.
That's cool. Awesome, man. That's awesome. Great to hear. All right, so we're gonna get right to it, man. Steve in the chat, what's going on, Steve? Absolutely, go Irish, man. Go Irish. We're gonna talk about that in a little while. But before we do that, let's talk about we've been spending so much time focusing, of course, on the college football playoff, which has been just it has been a boon to the sport. It's been absolutely amazing. Even though there have been some blowouts, there's still been some really entertaining football, and just the opportunity to see that wider pool of talent, and just a different opportunity in terms of being able to win a championship, and the season meaning more going later in the year during the regular season and all that. It's just been awesome. And so now we are down to we've got one game left, and then we'll be down to the Final Four in college, and we'll get to that. But first, I wanted to talk about one of the most interesting bowl games that we've had so far this season, and it was kind of anticlimactic, should I say, for the Colorado Buffaloes, who really, obviously they've been one of the major talks of the sport with Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, NFL Hall of Famer, so on and so forth, two-time SWAC champion with Jackson State Tigers, and then obviously moving on to Colorado, where they were terrible just 2 years ago, and this year they got to a point where they were literally, one game away from being eligible for the college football playoffs. So it's been amazing to see what he's been able to do with that program, and having his son there, and two of his sons, I should say, and bringing in a whole bunch of guys via the transfer portal, et cetera, and just bringing them back to a level of respectability no one expected to happen this quickly. And so watching that and seeing that, it was very good. And then to me, it was also a breath of fresh air when he said that all of his guys are going to play in the bowl game, because unless it's a playoff game, that's not something that we're used to seeing in the last, so many years.
Right.
And to be fair, that, that's respectable in terms of, if you're a guy who has NFL prospects, legitimate NFL prospects, you don't want to go out there, risk yourself, risk your body, risk your money in a situation where you're not necessarily playing for anything other than your brothers who are out there, which that's something as well. But you're not really playing for anything. You don't have a chance at a championship. And we look at a guy like what's my guy's name? Jake Butt, the tight end from Michigan. I think he ripped up his knee. Jalen Smith, the All-American linebacker from Notre Dame, ripped up his knee in the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State. was never the same. It cost him money. Now, thank goodness he got to Dallas, and Jerry Jones is very loyal with his players. He actually got a second contract there, but that cost him from being probably a top 10 draft pick to being a second round guy, and a lot of money there. And so you're seeing a lot of these guys here not playing these bowl games. So before we even get into that, to the game itself, kind of what are your thoughts, Ryan, on that? I know you've seen both sides of it. You've been there. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it in terms of guys sitting out these, I don't want to be disrespectful, but these less consequential bowl games in favor of trying to protect themselves for their futures?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, and I think I'm more on both sides of the fence than I've ever been before. Okay. I originally used to be a guy of like, nah, you went to the university to play, you're trying to make it to the league. Mm-hmm. Here's another opportunity to put some tape out there. But then I also think about like, man, if I'm already projected high, guaranteed stuff, maybe it is better to not go out there and play. Yeah. But I think you also can't play and live in fear, right? Right. It's part of the game. It's part of what you signed up for, but you also signed up for to make it, and you did make it. You only got one game left. That doesn't count. So it's kind of like, I can see both sides. I was a guy who needed the bowl games, if that makes sense. Okay. I got hurt my senior year. So I didn't play towards the end. The last 5, 6, 7 games I didn't play. But the bowl games, and at that time were different. There was no college football playoff. It wasn't what it used to be. Unfortunately, we knew we weren't going to have a chance to compete for a national championship. So it was like, hey, if we get a bowl game, that's great. That's the goal. Make it to a bowl game, because bowl games were that. So I can see both sides of the coin, because I think, hey, maybe I have a son one day, and he's projected to play. First round guy or whatever. It's going to be like, man, like, maybe you do sit, because it's like, hey, this is now a business decision. And I think college football is more so a business than it's ever been, for good and bad reasons. I mean, the NIL deal stuff that's going in now, and being able to transfer, you really got to look at yourself as a business, as an athlete. And I think if I could give any advice to athletes, I would say you got to look at yourself as a business sooner than later. I had the luxury of really not thinking about being a business until I got hurt my senior year, and it was like, oh shoot. These agents that were interested in me, I'm not going to have any more tape. Let me sign. Let me go ahead and get this locked away, because now it's NFL preparation time. So I'm a component for doing what's best for you, especially in this current college football climate where you're trying to make it to the national championship or the playoffs. And if you don't, well, these bowl games aren't as big as what they used to be.
There we go. I appreciate you giving that perspective, because we can look at it from the outside, and some of us may say exactly what you said. You have to look at it like a business, because unfortunately the programs are looking at it like a business. So you need to as well, especially if you have prospects going further. And then some of us may say, well, to your point, you did sign up for this, you could be injured. And, football is, as I've often said, the civilian equivalent, not equivalent, but the closest thing in the high level football, the closest thing in the civilian world to being in the military, in terms of being that tight knit group that really goes through it together in terms of literally blood, sweat, and tears. Right. And, putting everything out there and having that bond with your brothers. I'm sure you're still tight with guys that you played with, however long ago. And so I definitely can see both sides of it as well. So I appreciate that insight into how you guys look at it from the athlete perspective. So now, with that said, as I said, it was refreshing to me personally, that Deion said that all his guys would play, and of course they put out a big old insurance policy on those guys. And it's very interesting to me. Quick side note: why have schools been not doing this previously? They could have been doing this in terms of, if you want a chance to win these games, but you want your guys to play, don't denigrate your guys. Insure your guys. Give them.
I love it.
Give them that. Yeah, go ahead.
I love what, and I'm just gonna say what Deion did. I don't know who was the first that thought about it. I don't know how it is, but I do know that had NILs and all this stuff and all this money not been how it is now, I don't know if Deion is making that statement. I think this is again such a business now. It's much more than just playing football. And I like the aspect that he did that, so his guys would get to play. And I think as a fan base, you want to see your guys play one last time. You want to see Travis Leonard play one last time. They want to see these guys go one last time. So I thought
That's right.
it was cool to see that he did that. Now, obviously, everybody was praying that none of that stuff would need to come into play, but
Right.
it's cool to have that safety net there, and that might open the window for guys to want to compete and play more. Because
Yeah,
somebody might get a camp invitation from a bowl performance. I guarantee
that's
you.
right. Yeah,
Somebody's going to get
mhm.
invited to NFL camp because of how they played in the bowl game. And
Yeah,
that's,
I would assume so. I
you
can't
know,
imagine that, or if maybe they were projected lower, then some
there you
scout
go.
sees that, and maybe
There you
that
go.
helps to boost them, like a
Exactly.
guy like Scatterbull, who we'll talk about later. But
Right, right.
right. So you may not have all the elite measurables, but if you play a certain way and you show a little something. But okay, so yeah, so we saw BYU pretty much smoke Colorado
Yeah.
36-14. Shadur Sanders, 16 of 23, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 208 yards. Not at all a Shadur Sanders type game.
Right.
Colorado could not run the football at all.
Mm-mm.
19 carries for 2 yards. Now, again, a big part of that is in college. We know they count the sacks.
Mm-hmm.
Shadur was sacked 4 times, but overall he has a total of 9 carries for negative 34 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So we know here that the Buffalo's offensive line did not hold up. And on the whole, it had been a lot better this year than it was last year, which is great. And that's a big part of the improvement that we saw. But in this particular game, it couldn't hold up. Steve, I would not go as far as to say Colorado was exposed. I'd go as far as to say they lined up against a better, more physical team than them this year. To me, well, you know what? Let me get your thoughts on it. I know you're a big Deion guy and a Colorado guy. What were your thoughts on this game and kind of how it ended up that way?
Yeah, well, I wanted them obviously to be more competitive, right? I was rooting for
Mm-hmm.
them to win.
Right.
One, because BYU is a good team, good,
Mm-hmm.
strong, physical team. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what the downfall was for Colorado. I think interior, I mean, offensive line, defensive line, that's what the battle up front, they lost that battle. Shador was running for his life a lot of the times. That's why his rushes are so negative 20, however, how many yards you said, like he's trying to make plays. He's trying to run for his life. He's trying to do things. And I think had he had a little bit more time, they might had a better opportunity to play well. But BYU is a strong, sound football team.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah. Year in, year out too.
that's
They have a culture. Mm-hmm.
what was happening. And then also you can see what I like to see kind of through the lens is how people were reacting when things were going bad.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, great player, monumental player of all time, but Travis Hunter was showing a little bit more emotional theatrics than I was
Mm-hmm.
used to. Now, I don't know if it was because he had the pressure of all whatever's going on since you won the Heisman and all the other stuff, but there was a lot more negative body language that becomes contagious. Guys see that. Guys see, hey, we're getting ran off the field and you shrugging. You know that stuff is contagious, and if I'm looking as a scout, regardless, he's a great player. If I'm looking as a scout, and it's like, man, you don't want to see that out of your guy, out of your leader. You want to see him that's gonna, hey, like let's kind of get this thing together. Let's try to keep this train moving forward. So that was one thing that I noticed, that the mental game was kind of getting beat from Colorado's perspective. BYU was really coming down and hitting them in the mouth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that is where that's where Colorado is still building. And we saw there were times during the regular season where you saw they were able to hold up, they were able to stop the run, they were able to protect. And those were times when, they had their best performances, right? For instance, I remember I picked UCF against Colorado because at the time UCF was leading the nation in rushing. I think we talked about that here on the show. They were leading the nation in rushing, and I didn't believe that Colorado was going to be able to stop that offense. And they went there and pretty much, they pretty much shut that rushing offense down. And so I'm saying, okay, they definitely turned a corner here. They started to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. You saw kind of that Warren Sapp influence along the defensive line in terms of how these guys were able to play, but still not there yet. Still needs they need more of the 5-star type guys coming out of high school, which I believe they got the number 2 quarterback recruit in the country.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that should be interesting. Don't know if he's going to start as a true freshman. We'll find out, but we know that they've got those guys. They're continuing to build along the offensive line. I'm sure they're continuing to build along defensive line. If I was a defensive lineman and I wasn't sure, I'd be like, well, the chance to go play for Coach Sapp, like that
Right.
that guy's a Hall of Famer. He can teach
Right.
me what I need to know in order to have success,
Right. Right.
So,
But as a whole, Colorado has made tremendous strides from last year to this year. And I think that that's something that we can they can hang their hat on. Like they did improve, yes, we'd love to see them make the playoffs, but to see where they started, to see where they're at now, that's impressive.
Absolutely. 1-11, 3 years ago, worst average margin of loss, 29 points per game, just getting destroyed at every turn. And now you're seeing this. No, I definitely think that, and this is the funny thing, right? Because of Coach Prime, Deion's personality, people think it's all glamour and glitz, but he's a really legitimate, old school, tough guy, football minded coach, right? Like, yeah, he's got all that other stuff just because of how he is, but when it comes to football, he's old school and he's real with it. And so I definitely believe that you're going to continue to see, well, for as long as he's there, right? But, should he stay there, which he says he will, but we're going to continue to see that team build in the trenches and really get tougher and get more physical, while also being able to maintain hopefully some sort of a high flying attack on the outside, because being real, for the most part, unless you just have elite guys on the back end or on along your lines of scrimmage, you still need those weapons on the outside. You need that explosiveness in modern college football. You know that better than anyone. So we're going to see that and watch it continue to grow. And I think it's going to be all right, although it's going to be very interesting to me to see how the quarterback position looks without Shedeur Sanders under center. So we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope he stays. But he's a father at the end of the day, and he want to coach his boys, I think. But I would love to see what Colorado does and if they can keep moving forward, because they got a good program. Like he's got them moving in the right direction. It's just, can they get over the next hump?
Right. The next hurdle. And that's, possibly winning a conference title in a conference that's generally wide open now without the presence of Texas and Oklahoma. And, so that, and then hopefully getting into the college football playoff. Yep. Should be interesting. Should he stay there? So, but real quick, everyone is talking about if he stays there, myself included. I don't like the idea of him going, if it should end up that way, with Shedeur Sanders. And the reason I say that, Shedeur Sanders is a grown man. Shiloh Sanders is a grown man. At some point, don't you want to step away from your father and do your own thing as a man? Like, I wouldn't, as much as I love my dad, like, and he's passed away now, but and I would love to be able to see him and talk to him, but even if I could, I can't imagine that I would want to be up under him that closely every day as a man. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying Shedeur is not a man. I'm just, that's kind of odd to me. But it also could be that I've lived without him for many years now. So that's something that I'm used to. So I don't know. But for me personally, I'm like, that's kind of, at some point, step out and spread your own wings. But that's me.
Yeah. And I think, I feel that. I would like to see just what he looks like not in a program where his dad's there, like you said. Doesn't matter if he needs his dad coaching or whatever that emotional connection is, just to see, hey, what would that be like? I've seen stuff online where it's like, oh yeah, he going to the Raiders. Like, yeah, I would love to see him by himself at the Raiders or at some place where he's the only Sanders in the locker room. He's the only one, so that's
no Shiloh, no Deion,
yeah.
Just doing his own thing.
Yeah, but either way, he's going to be successful, right? He can play.
I believe that.
And I believe when he has what he needs to succeed, he succeeds, right? You got an O-line out there. You put him behind any Big Ten O-line or someone that's really holding up.
Yeah.
He playing 7-on-7 out there and can run for a touchdown.
Facts.
So
you're 100% right.
It'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's move on from that, and this is one I'm gonna enjoy here. So, if you know college football, if you pay attention to college football, if you're a college football fan, you know about the Southeastern Conference, right? Widely regarded as the best conference in college football, and in fairness, what is it, since I want to say 2000, either 06 or 08, they have had 5 different programs win national championships. No other conference can touch that. I get it. They've had 5 programs win national championships, including Alabama winning 6. So that kind of skews the numbers just a little bit, but so be it. Okay. And I think what was that? Bama's got 2, Georgia's got 2, LSU has 2, Bama's got the 6, and Auburn's got the 1. I think that's it. So the SEC can hang their hat on the fact that they have been the power conference in terms of winning it all over that time period. Cool. A lot of great athletes down here in the South. They were stockpiling them, but now we're starting to see things are changing a little bit. And why are things changing? Things are changing. We've got a wider playoff system, right? We have transfer portal. We have NIL. So we know, this is not assumption, we know because we've heard people say it, the SEC's been paying for years. I'm not saying they're the only ones who are paying, but they've been paying for years. And that's how they were, dominating in terms of all the talent, right? Cool. So with that, now you're starting to see now that everybody can pay and so on and so forth. And again, the transfer portal, the talent is starting to spread out. And all of a sudden, the mighty, mighty SEC just doesn't look quite as dominant, right? It just means more is what they tell you. And I'm not going to argue. I live in the South. I live in Florida. It means a hell of a lot down here, more so than anywhere I've lived. I've lived in Big 12 country. I've lived in ACC country. I've lived in Big East country. The only major conference country I haven't ever lived in is Pac-12, right? So I've been around a little bit. I know a little something about college football and the regions, and it really does just mean more down here. However, we have this narrative that they're far and away the most superior. And you'll remember this, Ryan. One of the things I've often said is that as great as the SEC is, they're great on the top. But this narrative that top to bottom, they're just better than everyone else, it's not true. I've always argued that because the lower middle down to the bottom of the conference is no better than the lower middle or bottom of any other conference. I never, except maybe the ACC. ACC is just bad. I don't know what's up with them because they have a lot of talent in that area. I don't know what's going on. They got the Tidewater. They got the DMV. They got down here, Florida, Georgia, all that. I can't understand why the ACC can't get right. But anyway, so, I've always argued that it's just, it's a narrative that people are pushing, which then leads to lazy NFL scouting. When in doubt, take the SEC guy when the SEC guy may not always be the best, but you don't want to do the work to go find the diamond in the rough in another conference. So hey, just take the SEC guy. You'll be good, right? So you have all this, and it just keeps, so the draft is dominated by the SEC. And then you see, okay, now, and don't get me wrong, they have a lot of great players because a lot of times you see a lot of NFL Pro Bowlers, all pros and whatnot. These guys are SEC guys, but they're not the only. Here we go. What up, Nino? What's good, brother? So they're not the only conference that is worth anything, right? So before I get to some comments by college football analyst Joel Klatt, who had some really good stuff to say, and he's very objective about it, I want to know your thoughts on this whole SEC narrative, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Well, I'm from the South, right?
Yes.
I mean, I was born in Miami, really grew up here in Jacksonville, but I didn't go to SEC school. I wish I did. At the time I did, just naturally growing up, you're watching Florida State. My real school, though, I thought I was going to be a Miami Hurricane. So they weren't in the SEC, but I loved University of Miami. Like I loved the orange and blue. That was just, that was a team that I grew up dreaming I was going to play for. But I think the SEC as a whole is very strong. You made up a great point of like the top to bottom aspect. And I don't think I've ever thought about it at the top to bottom aspect. I've thought of it as like, hey, SEC schools, you're going to have this type of caliber product and player, which I think is true. But also now hearing you say like, well, that bottom half, and I was like, man, there is some truth to that. And I think there's more truth to that recently. I think a big thing that comes down to college football is coaching, right? We can talk about Alabama. He was the greatest coach in my generation, at least at a time. And it starts there. Also the ability to move around and go to different schools. So there is no more of that. Hey, I signed a contract to be here. I'm probably going to be here for 4 years. That might not be a thing anymore. I always thought SEC football was fast. They're physical players. And they're just naturally athletic players that knew they got a chance to make to the NFL, right? And I think that there's players all over the country. But there's a lot of great players in the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
No doubt.
lot of
No doubt. I
speed
can't
down
argue that.
here, and there's stuff down here that you can't teach. There's God given God. I'm saying, not saying God can't bless nobody with speed in the Midwest, but it's just naturally you're gonna see someone with some speed coming down from the South area, which makes those SEC schools strong, powerful, and fast.
So let me say this, right? Everything you said was correct. I can't argue any of that. But the only thing I'll slightly push back on is that whole premise that naturally the guys from this part of the country are just better. Do you think it has anything to do with, and I've actually done a little research on this, but do you think it has anything to do with the fact that because of the weather down here, guys can train all year round at football and track, whereas, say, up north, for instance, I think Ohio is generally the fourth best high school football state in the country. And it gets cold as hell up there, right? We know this. But still, they have great athletes, right? Football, basketball, etc., track, all that. Ohio, for whatever reason, puts out really good athletes, right? So do you think there's anything to the point that SEC climate allows guys to train year round outside versus up north where you may have to move away from track and football when it starts getting cold?
Yeah, well, I definitely think the weather plays a factor in training, right? I can't say that, hey, well, because we got the sun year round, heat blazing down here, that's going to make us better. But yes, it's a lot easier to get your body ready to perform, to work out, run, and lift some weights when it's warmer weather, right? I understand that. But I think it's a different culture, if that makes sense. Like, that's a great point. Like, it says up north, right? So up north, they play a lot of sports up north, right? A lot of basketball, things like that. And we're down south, we play basketball, but we're not really playing basketball like it is in the Midwest, in the Ohio, in the Indiana area. But I definitely can say that, yes, this warmer weather does affect training year round. It does affect people. But I don't know if it's enough to say like that's the biggest difference on why SEC is where it is compared to other schools in the Midwest. Now, I think skill position wise, there's a lot of skill guys that come from the South, and maybe that helps that it is warm weather year round. We grew up running on the beach. We grow up doing things outside and burning in the heat compared to guys that, when it's November, they can't run outside.
Right.
Remember, what I'm saying? I can go do a beach workout right now in December, January,
True.
So there's probably some truth to that, but I don't think it's enough to say that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I don't know that it's the only reason. I wouldn't go as far as that, but I think it definitely does play a role. For instance, to your point, a lot of skill guys come from where? Southern Cal, right? A lot of skill guys, or a lot of receivers and DBs and stuff like that. Similar type of climate year round, right? So, maybe not as hot, but similar climate. So that's kind of where I was going with that. But okay, so back to the SEC, it just means more, right? And this is where we get to it. And what made me think about this topic? Well, let's start with your guys, your Illinois Fighting Illini. I love y'all because when the 12-team playoff was announced, one of the teams that ESPN, and of course we know their connection to the SEC, but one of the teams that they were beefing about being left out was what? The South Carolina Gamecocks. And lo and behold, the Gamecocks had an opportunity to go out and prove that against the Fighting Illini in their bowl game. And tell us what happened, Ryan, because you were there.
They didn't handle business. Now, I'll be honest, a lot of the game I was socializing. I saw some teammates. We was hanging out. We was catching up, catching the play. Towards the last little bit of the game, we really were watching it a lot more closely as some analysts, I would say. But yeah, it was a great win for us. We're thinking about the off season now and next year, and the talk of that's still an SEC school, and that's still a great team. Yes, some guys didn't play. We didn't have all of our players. Some of our top receivers weren't in. That type of stuff. That's always going to be there. But still, on paper, a win is a win.
That's right.
Be the SEC school. You can use that in recruiting this off season. You can use our records for the past 2 years and how we're rolling and our opportunity to make it into the playoffs, being a Big Ten school. So it's a good look for us in our program.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. I love to see it, and I definitely thought about you, and I was like, yeah, I know my man Ryan is happy right now, and so real quick, how does it feel to see your alma mater and you're there and you have the opportunity to watch them have the success like that? And
Yeah.
what is this is this your first 10-win season or just the first one in a long time?
Probably the first one in a long time. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I will be honest. A big thing, we're trying to make it to the bowl. Ever since I
Mm-hmm.
left, I realized, okay, cool. Bowl games is where it's at. That's a neutral site.
Mm-hmm.
The better they play, the better chance they can be here in Florida.
Right.
Boom, we can all get together. It's like a
Okay.
reunion with the guys. You feel me? So
Mm-hmm.
it's been cool to see that now that we've got a good program, a good coach in place, that we are winning games consistently and we're
Mm-hmm.
competing. That
Yes.
Michigan win we had this year was huge. We had to throw
Yeah.
back uniforms. Everybody was like, man, I hope they don't go out there and pull it Illinois. And they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
They won. And it's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking like a good team. They're building.
Yeah.
We got a good staff in place.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we have good recruits coming in. And the program's excited. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's cool to see. There's a great fan base. There was a lot of orange in Orlando for the bowl game, and it was cool to
Okay.
see everyone there loud and rocking and supporting our team.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. In the Las Vegas Bowl, we saw USC, a not good USC team, I think 6-6 this year, beat Texas A&M 35-31. We saw the big one I wanted to talk about. I know it's a sore spot for your household, Ryan, but I got to do it. The big one I wanted to talk about was Michigan, a team who took a clear step back from last year being 15-0 undefeated national champions to would they lose 5 games this year? 7-5.
Yeah.
And they won the ReliaQuest Bowl 19-13 over Alabama,
Big
breaking the
win.
longest double-digit season win streak in college football history. 16 straight years, the Tide have won double-figure games, and this year they won 9. And so Michigan beat them, and I'm not going to tolerate this foolishness of, Alabama didn't care. SEC teams only care when it's for national championships. No. You don't get that. Because if it just means more and you're better than everyone, you should beat everybody. And Michigan didn't even have a lot of their guys who are NFL guys playing in this game. But they did what Michigan does, and they dominated this game. And they won 19-13, man. What are your thoughts on that? Because I thought it was so beautiful. I loved it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm learning that, a lot of people don't like Alabama.
You don't say.
That's what I'm learning, and
Yes,
I've been on both sides of the coin. I've
That's
been
right.
when I'm not a true Alabama fan to now, hey,
Mhm.
I'm marrying into someone who's Alabama fan, and
Mhm.
this is all they know, right? And
Mhm.
rightfully
Mhm.
so. I mean, they've been a great team. They've been a historic program. As
Yes.
anyone like who's a part of a historic program, there's Michigan fans who are
Mhm.
just as diehard as
Mhm.
the Alabama fans and family
Mhm.
that I have. I think that it's been a tough year for Alabama. Tough
Which
for a
is
new
crazy. They
coach,
won 9 games. That's
right?
crazy.
Tough for a new coach to come in
Yeah.
and fill the shoes that were left, right? That's hard to do. It's also hard to do, you got a split locker room. You got a locker room that's used to how it used to be, but you
Mhm.
want to come in and kind of put your own little twist, your own little flavor
Yeah.
on it, but still maintain the respect for what was before. But then there's
Mhm.
also the side of like, well, I don't really gotta respect what was before because he's not here. This is my team
Mhm.
now. This is what we doing moving forward.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think there was a little bit of that, but again, it starts at the top,
Mhm.
and they'll get what they need to get. They'll get back going.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach,
He's a
man.
good
He
coach,
really
and he'll
is.
get his guys moving how they need to move.
Mhm.
Will it look like a Nick Saban Alabama team? We
No.
may never know. It may never
No.
get back to that because college football at
Mhm.
that time was different, right?
Mhm.
It was a different era of ball. Um, just the fact that if you're disappointed, you can transfer and go elsewhere and start the
Right.
next season, like that,
Right.
that
Right.
opens up everything.
Mhm.
Because think about how many times that, you know, Alabama was great, and then boom,
Mhm.
the seniors would go. Then you'd watch the spring game
Mhm.
the next year, like, who is that kid? Oh,
Mhm.
that kid been
Mhm.
on the bench, and he's
Right.
now
Just
getting
waiting.
drafted first round the following. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's gonna be it's gonna be different.
Mhm.
It's gonna be different to see how those things move. But yes, we were not excited that Alabama lost, but we are aware that this was not the same Alabama team that we've seen in the
Mhm.
past. Really excited for next year to see how they respond,
Mhm.
how they make changes, if they do make changes, and see what really happens. But hats off to Michigan. They were hungry because at the end of the day, Alabama's name is still Alabama. They don't care who your coach is.
That's right.
And it's a chance to play Alabama. That's tape. You just need one good play. That's tape that you got for your life. So
that's right. That's right.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, and like we talked about at the end of the day, like I was talking about, the top of the SEC is still outstanding. You still got, as it stands right now, going into this quarterfinal game, Notre Dame and Georgia, you still have 2 SEC teams in the running for winning a championship. So we're not burying the conference just yet, right? Because let's just say hypothetically Texas goes and wins it all, although I don't think they'll get past Ohio State the way Ohio State is playing. But let's say Texas wins the whole thing. Then you have since 2006, you'll have 6 SEC programs now with national championships, and they can continue to hang their hat on that. Hey, it just means more. I get it. But as of right now, against the Big Ten, the SEC is 1-4 in the bowl season this year. And again, that's beautiful. But let's hear what Joel Klatt has to say about the SEC and the narratives. Let's hear what he has to say.
Some other bowl games out there. Illinois beat South Carolina. Michigan beat Alabama. And I point those 2 out only because those 2, Alabama and South Carolina, were really at the heart of a lot of that commentary that we heard over the first round of the college football playoff. And I just want to take a moment because this is not going to be a victory lap. I'm not going to try to claim some sort of like conference superiority one over the other. In fact, I'm going to argue against that completely. I think arguing about conference superiority is bad for the sport. I really do. And it's so clear to me that this idea, this narrative that is pushed quite heavily, by the way, and I think that you see it, and I know that I certainly see it, but this idea that the SEC is clearly the best conference, and I want to be specific about the clearly. The narrative that the SEC is clearly the best conference needs to die. It needs to die because it's pretty clear that it's over. And I think there are some people that are going to sit there and be like, oh, like Klatt's going to try to take a victory lap or relish in this. I'm not relishing in this actually at all. It just needs to die and it's over because it's been proven to be over. Okay. The games have played out. So let's just try to evaluate the games for what they are and the teams for what they are without all of this spin. And I'm hoping that that's the case. Big Ten 4-1 over the SEC in bowl games this year. Do I think the Big Ten was a really good conference this year? Yeah. I cover the Big Ten, by the way. Do I think that the SEC was really good this year? Yeah, they were really deep this year. But the Big Ten SEC matchups in the bowl season would suggest that the Big Ten has not only held their own, but done better than that. I mean, Michigan totally handled Alabama, totally handled them. By the way, without their 4 best defensive players, they didn't even have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, or Will Johnson on the field and just locked up Alabama. Alabama couldn't do anything offensively. Nothing. Okay. So again, this idea that conference is clearly the best, it needs to be over. And I believe that it is.
It's not going to be over as long as Greg Sankey is pushing the narrative and as long as ESPN has the connection with the SEC network and, of course, the college football playoff. That's not going to go away. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some truth. There's some truth to that. There's some truth that, these SEC teams historically that were running the show really aren't anymore. I mean, you think, because in my mind, I feel like LSU is a team that just didn't do as well as historically they've done,
There's a reason to that.
And I don't even know. You're right. And I don't even know what their record was, but there's just stuff, that's happening. But I am excited to see these other teams competing, right? Big Ten for us, it's cool to see that Big Ten is definitely looking like some good football. And now, the flame might be under the SEC to kind of hey, all right, let's really see. Now it's showtime.
Yeah, absolutely. But the question is, are they going to be as what they've been all this time now that they can't stockpile all the talent because the talent is much more free to move around in a way that they weren't previously. And again, now that all these schools are able to pay, they're still going to try and cheat. You're always going to have schools that are going to try and cheat and find a way. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see the SEC dominance continue. Like, they might win a championship this year, but I don't think it's going to continue unabated the way we saw it before. And especially not in a situation where you have a 14 playoff and there were multiple years where you had 2 SEC teams in it. Yep. We know how they finagled that. Now, did they win it on the field? Yes, but we know how they finagled it to make sure that they had their guys in position to do that. And I've talked about it countless times, how they constantly rated these guys higher and made sure even at the bottom of the top 25, that lower tier SEC teams were rated so that when the guys beat them or got beat, then it was okay. You got beat by a ranked team, or you beat a higher ranked team, so that they could artificially inflate their rankings. Like, if you go back and look, like, this was commonplace. We saw it years and years, but it is what it is. You can't go back and change it. Those guys consistently won the championships on the field. For instance, 2012, nightmare for me. Alabama went and absolutely mopped the floor with my beloved Irish, 42-14. Right. So when it came down to it, in general, they would get the job done when it came down to it. But manipulating the opportunity to be there, I don't have a whole lot of respect for that. But it is what it is, and all that's done.
Well, like you said, now that we have this playoff system, we'll truly be able to see, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't look like we're going back to the old system, right? I think there's probably a 0.5% chance that they're going to do away with the college playoffs at this point, right? So
too much money.
This is the new thing. So now it's going to be okay. Boom. At the beginning, there was X amount of teams in the playoffs that were SEC. Here's who won. And now they're going to start seeing, who's going to be the team that's going to be consistently make it into the playoffs. Who's going to be the team that's going to consistently get that first round bye. I think that's going to be the new measuring stick of like, hey, everyone's shooting for that first round bye, because you beat that, you play one game, you pretty much in the big dance. You just got to be on top of your P's and Q's.
That's right. So you love to see it, man, because my whole thing is about competition. I don't like manipulating it. I like competition, and don't tell some of these smaller schools and smaller teams that no matter what they do, their season didn't matter because they're not, quote unquote, one of the big boys. I don't like that at all. So, I love it. And before we move on to the next topic, I'm going to just play something interesting that I saw on ESPN Get Up. I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and it had Paul Feinbaum and Greg McElroy, both SEC guys, on with Mike Greenberg. And Mike Greenberg can be a little more objective about this. He's a New York City kid, but he works for ESPN, so he's still got to be careful how he plays it. But let's check this out.
Paul has a surprise, am I being told? What is that, Paul?
Well, Greeny, I led the Alabama parade to get them into the playoffs. You know that. I stood on every building, especially on this show. And on the first day of the new year, I'm surrendering. I am waving the white flag. Forget Alabama. I'm done. Count me out.
I think that's crazy coming from Paul Feinbaum, the ultimate SEC guy. And obviously I think, he did that to add some levity to the show, but this is a guy who, he's got his show that's so heavy in the South and so SEC focused, and that's what he's about. That's where his bread is buttered. But I thought that was so funny, especially, when he was banging his chest and Indiana shouldn't be in. What have they done? SMU shouldn't be in. What have they done? And then after both of those teams lost in convincing fashion in the first round, he was even more so on that. But then when Alabama goes and gets beaten by Michigan for the second straight year, then what choice did he have, right? So, I love the fact that he was forced to capitulate and eat some crow there on national TV. I thought that was awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. And I mean, a lot of Alabama fans. Well, I also think too, it's tough to play a bowl game when you just miss the playoffs. Now, I've never been in that situation.
Okay. But
thinking that there's a potential that you get to make it to play for the national championship in the playoffs and then you don't. There were some guys on Alabama that was like, we don't care. I guarantee you. And that's the tough part of sports, but that's the new norm now. You can't. It's hard. It's hard because I think if more was on the line, Alabama might have played better. Because Michigan did outplay them. I saw the tape. I saw they weren't protecting Milroe. He's running around, turnovers, all that good stuff.
But that's Wink Martindale. That's an NFL caliber defensive coordinator of some elite defenses in the league. So he's going to be bringing stuff that is very difficult for a college kid to prepare for and be able to identify. He's going to have some exotic blitz looks.
Well, yeah, listen, it's tough, but I'm with him. He's waving that flag, and it's like, that's why I'm excited, especially to watch Alabama specifically. Next year after, once you hit that 3-4 year mark, you can kind of assume, well, Nick Saban's guys are gone. This is this is truly your team. On top of people transferring in, or transferring out, but some people are going to transfer in. Some people are going to transfer to Alabama because of who Alabama is and because of the SEC shield and what it all stands for. So we're going to see.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll say about that before we move on and get to the college football playoff is that, one, we can't keep doing this. I'm sure there's a lot of guys on Alabama who didn't care. Like, that's always the excuse when the SEC teams get beat. They didn't care. It wasn't for a chair. We can't keep doing that. That's not fair. And the other thing I'll say is, I think that Kalen DeBoer is going to get screwed here for a couple of reasons. One, to your point, he's following a legend, right? He can't possibly fill those shoes. Nobody could, except maybe an Urban Meyer, right? There's nobody, maybe a Dabo. There's nobody coaching now who would be able to fill those shoes that Saban left there, right? But you have that. And then secondly, here's the other big part of it. If you notice, the SEC coaching carousel, it does not do well with people from outside that region, right? It's very insular. For instance, you had a guy like Brett Bielema who just won 10 games with Illinois, right? No disrespect to Illinois, but that's not necessarily known as a powerhouse, right? He won 10 games with those guys and then beat an SEC team who was supposed to have been, viable for the college football playoff. He did that, right? But when he was at Arkansas, for some reason, he couldn't make it work. For whatever reason, and, this Southern culture, and again, I'm not taking shots, I live here, but the Southern culture is insular, and you have to kind of be a fit for the culture in certain jobs and certain environments. And I don't know that being a Northern guy who he is, that Kalen DeBoer is going to fit. And I think he's going to end up getting jerked. And I believe he's going to end up getting jerked, and he's going to end up getting fired in maybe next year or the year after. Because part of it, too, is that Alabama, their trustees, their fans, their boosters are so spoiled from the years and years and years of winning at such a high level. If he can't get it back there quickly, he's going to get fired. And then what are they going to do? They're going to hire a Southern guy, and it's going to be that way. I think that's a huge part of it. All right. Cool. So let's get to the next topic, the finals topic, and that's college football playoff talk, man. And well, we have had what I consider, there have been some blowouts, but there have been some really good games too. And even some of the games that were considered blowouts were better than the final score showed. So let's go to, 2 nights ago, New Year's Eve night, we saw Penn State beat Boise State 31-14. Ashton Jeanty, arguably the best running back in the country. He came, less than 100 yards short of breaking Barry Sanders' all-time single-season rushing record. But I asterisk that because when Barry Sanders did it, they weren't counting bowl game numbers. So whatever. But, that's how it goes, apparently, across sports. So anyway, Penn State beats Boise State 31-14. I'm sorry. And at times that game looked like Boise get back in and pull it a little closer. But Penn State's defense and their defense kept making plays. And will do, Bruce. I got you. Their defense kept making plays. They got three picks off of quarterback Maddox Madsen. And it's interesting because I didn't even realize until I was watching the game that Boise State led the country in sacks this year. So they are able to get pressure. And then obviously we know they could run the football, but they got forced into kind of a desperate situation in terms of trying to throw the football because for the most part, Ashton Jeanty was kind of bottled up. He did end up with 100 yards. He had a 26-yard run at one point. But overall, they did a really good job corralling him. Very fast, very athletic defense for Penn State, much similar to a Georgia, much similar to a Notre Dame. Very fast, very athletic, very good. I know Papa Langford was pretty happy about that outcome.
Yeah,
so, right.
He was.
So, one step closer to them, hopefully much like Notre Dame, hopefully, rekindling the final level of greatness. But what were your thoughts on this game with Penn State go ahead and winning and knocking Boise State out of this thing?
Well, I didn't know. I thought Boise State was going to put up a better performance, if that makes sense. I knew Penn State was who Penn State was. And having to play games too as well, like I knew that there was going to be a little freshness to them, and was really interested to see how Boise State was going to respond to getting that bye, to just getting granted this spot, missing the first round. So I think it was tough for Boise State. Again, running back got over 100 yards, but they needed more, right? You needed more from other guys sooner to kind of keep up with what Penn State was doing. And Penn State is a really complete team. Like you said, they got a really strong defense, physical defense. They fly around, and they look good. They look strong.
Yeah, Drew Aller, not the gaudiest numbers, 13 of 25, 171 yards, 3 touchdown passes, no picks, and that's big. But he was sacked 4 times. I don't know why, when Penn State was pretty much gashing these guys on the ground, they ran 41 times, 216 yards. Katron Allen, I think, was averaging like 8 yards a carry, 17 for $134.
Yeah,
they were running it down Boise State's throat with ease, and I don't know why they wanted to drop back and try to throw it 25 times. Like, are you trying to show that you can? Or are you trying to prepare for whatever the next round will be? Man, look, if you can run it like that and you can continue to win, just run it like that and continue to win. But Penn State was the team that was able to run it effectively, not Boise State. So look at the differential here. 41 carries for Penn State, 216 yards. Boise State, 40 carries for half that, $108. You know what I'm saying? So Penn State did a fantastic job. Like you said, really flying around on defense, doing great things, getting 3 interceptions. So, I don't think there's too much to say about that. Great season from Boise State.
Great season.
Yeah, continually an outstanding player in the group of 5 level. And I don't think they're a team that's just going to fall off the map. They've been this good for a long time, right? I think a big part of it is they're not able to catch anyone by surprise anymore, right? Not since that 06 Fiesta Bowl where they upset Oklahoma. Right. Everyone knows this is a quality program. And quick side note, I've been saying for years, and I think that part of this could have worked towards saving the Pac-12. I don't know why they didn't pull in Boise State from the Mountain West. I don't know why they didn't do that. Personally, I think they were afraid of it because they know that Boise State, even though they were a group of 5 program, they were still a quality program who's able to get quality recruits, and they didn't want to lose any of their recruits to that school because a lot of times guys who didn't end up at the Pac-12 schools would end up at Boise State. So that's my thought. It could be more to it than that, but that's my thought. Do you have any final notes on this Boise State Penn State game?
No, that was it. I was, hoping it was going to be more of a shootout or a closer game, but once Penn State was running the ball, and I could tell, like, all right, this ain't it. And once Boise State wasn't moving the ball or being as explosive as they needed to be, I was like, oh man, if it's going to be a round for round fight, they're not going to make it.
No doubt. All right, so let's go to the first game yesterday, and this was a game, man, that I so enjoyed this game. This was probably the best game of the tournament so far. This was Texas versus Big 12 champion Arizona State, and it started out looking like it was going to be a blowout.
Yep.
And then Cam Scatterboo. Yep. I mean, I don't know when's the last time I saw a single player take over a game like this. Now, don't get me wrong, it ended up in a loss, so that kind of sours the performance. But overall, like, we gotta be real here. I can't tell you when's the last time I saw a single player take over a performance like this. I think he was 2nd or 3rd in the nation in rushing this year. First player since Christian McCaffrey in college football, 1,500 plus rushing yards, 500 plus receiving yards. So great season overall for him. Heisman Trophy finalist, Big 12, I think offensive player of the year, I believe. And this guy, this is the funny thing to me. Before this game against Texas, number 1 defense in the country now, he said, "No one can stop me." Whoa. So you shot your shot against an elite team you're going against before the game. You didn't say it during the game. You said it before the game, right?
Yeah.
Shot your shot. He goes out there. Check this out. The guy has 30 carries for $143, 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
He throws a touchdown, a 42-yard touchdown pass, which I just found out prepping for this show. He audibled to that call. Crazy, right? He audibled to that call. And then he led Arizona State in receiving with 8 catches for 99 yards. Like,
yeah, he had some big catches. He had a big one coming out of the backfield. That was
right.
That
I
was
think
nice.
he had like 62 yards on that deep wheel route down the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it wasn't even a wheel route. He wasn't in the backfield. I think he actually lined up wide for that. And he just, he took it down the sideline. He caught it. And that was just, it was awesome, you know. And I don't want to make this all about him because his quarterback, Sam Levitt, made some key runs to pick up first downs as well.
Yeah.
And he played his butt off also. But clearly the main guy was Scatterbo, and he did a tremendous job. So before we get over to the Texas side, man, your thoughts on Arizona State, what he was able to do, what that team was able to do, because it looked like it was going to be a blowout.
Yeah, it really did. And I think this is why they made the playoffs. We were hoping that we would get games like this because when they got back to overtime, I was like, yo, they might do this. Like I was really hoping that defense could at least get one good stop or one good sack on that first play, but Texas gashed them and scored, and I was like, oh, yep, that's gonna be tough. But
that's right.
I was impressed with Arizona State. They had every opportunity to just lay it down and take it and be like, we're outnumbered, but we're outplayed. We're not meant to be here, but they did a good job of battling back, and that was cool for me to see. Scatterbo is a good player. Physical, unique back. I think being his size is really what helps him. He's small. He's kind of hard. You lose track of him. Kind of like a Sproles type body or Maurice Jones-Drew, one of those small guys that bowling ball type guy. You can lose him.
Not as fast as those guys, but
right. Not as fast, but the same build. So it was cool to see. I'll be interested to see kind of how his career continues. I do wish I would have watched him a little bit closer over the years, just to kind of watch his day-to-day game. But the stuff they did on game day before the game was interesting too, just about his career, where he came from, the stories of his life. And he's really been who he's been, his entire life. So it's cool for him to kind of get his shine towards the end and almost bring his team back and make it into the playoff, deeper into the playoffs.
Yes, correct. But I think it was awesome that we got to see such a great game. So quick question for you. I know you saw it. Was that targeting towards the end of the game? A lot of people are saying they're glad that the officials didn't take the game into their hands. But Arizona State,
when he caught him, turn that one.
He caught it like right when he caught it, he got blasted and he was laid out for a minute. I think by the rule it was for me. On paper it probably was based on the rules. But I think in that moment, bang bang play, it didn't look malicious to me. And I think that's the emotional part of the targeting situation that kind of gets guys in trouble. Because when things look malicious, it's like, oh yeah, that was definitely targeting. You hit him in the head, but you look like you really meant it. That was targeting. But this one, it was like, hey, you did everything, like helmet to helmet. On paper, that's targeting, but it really didn't look malicious. It looked more competitive. It looked more response, boom, boom, get back and play. So I think as a whole, from what I've seen, the referees have been doing a fairly decent job with calling these games, kind of letting guys play, and not letting the moment get too big, if you will. So let me ask you this: elite wide receiver, kick return guy. So how do we see when Texas, what was it, 4th and 13 in the first overtime? We see Matthew Golden, who's been torching these guys all day. How the hell does he get behind the safety wide open in the back of the end zone? How does that happen, wide receiver?
So coaching, and I wasn't there. I wasn't on the field, but I could probably say as a defender, you think they're trying to get 13 yards, not score a touchdown. It's 4th and long. So they're thinking like, all right, they gonna try to, throw something at 12 yards and try to get one, not they're taking a shot to the end zone. That's the only way I think that on 4th and 13 you get beat deep, similar to how Alabama won that 3rd and 20 something in that national, it was
Mm-hmm.
the national or whatever game it was.
Yeah,
Went down the sideline.
Okay.
Like, how do you let someone get 3rd and 20, 21
Mhm.
yards? Like that's you know what I mean. So I think there was a little lapse in that. Also, the moment's big. Like
Mhm.
you got it though. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things, but I think you got to fall back on your fundamentals. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, in that situation, guys got distracted and they
Mhm.
gashed them.
Yeah, that was tough, man. I said, "Wow, how does that happen?" He ran right past the safety, right past him. Like, how does the safety let that? But
Safety,
you know, he's the
split
last line of
second, had
defense,
eyes in the
literally.
backfield or
Mhm.
lost his key for a split second, and that's all it
Mhm.
takes.
Okay.
The quarterback can put it on the spot, and that's touchdown. And plus, as a receiver, we know where we're going. We know
That's
the
true
play.
too.
As soon as
Right.
we break the huddle, we know, like, okay, I'm going to line
Mhm.
outside the numbers. If I'm running a post, I'm stepping in for 5, pushing up to 12, and I'm gone. If that
Mhm.
safety is flat-footed, even, or not looking at me,
Mhm.
touchdown. I know
Right
it.
past him.
Right past him.
Facts. Man, that was crazy. I saw that. I said, man, I gotta ask Ryan about
Yeah.
this. There's no
Yep.
excuse for this.
No excuse. No
Yeah,
excuse.
yeah. Then we see Texas come back immediately. And this is where I give Sark credit with the play calling. Immediately on the first play of the second overtime, boom, he goes and scores. I'm like, that was
Knowing that
aggressive.
the defense is
Did not
tired,
expect
knowing that
that.
the defense is a little rattled,
Yeah.
knowing that, because that's hard, and people don't think
Mhm.
about that. So, like 2-point when it's overtime like that, so
Mhm.
Texas scored, boom,
Mhm.
defense was on the field,
Right.
kick the field goal, defense go right back out there
Mhm.
because that was 4th down. They thinking that
Mhm.
we about to win the game, we about to get off
Right.
the field.
Right.
Dagger, that takes so much out of you. Now you got to go back out there, recalibrate, and then
Mhm.
get going. And by that time,
Mhm.
Texas, they drove a play for a touchdown, so
Right.
it's a lot of mind game. It's a lot of there's football is the best sport out there. It's the ultimate
Yeah.
team game.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate team game.
Yeah.
There's so many layers, there's so many things, because it's a bunch of individuals that gotta be on
Mhm.
the same accord.
Yeah.
You gotta do your job, but we still
Mhm.
playing as a unit. So it's
Mhm.
and just because you're tired, we
Mhm.
can't afford for you to be tired. We don't know how many plays we got left. We don't
Mhm.
know, you know what I mean? We got a lot of stuff on the line. So
Yeah.
it was a good game.
Yeah, man. I think it was a classic, a double overtime. It was not just because it was double overtime, but it was just a classic in the way the game played out.
How
But
they came back was great. That's what made it a classic in my mind.
Fantastic. Let's get to the last one,
Mhm.
and then I will let you get out of here. Oregon and Ohio State. This was supposed to be the game of the night. Turns out the previous game was the game of the day or the game of the tournament so far. Ohio State looks like an absolute machine right now. They've scored 40 twice so far against 2 really good teams, and they just took Oregon apart. They took them apart early, just straight dismantled these dudes. Again, wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, man.
Balling. Confident. He plays confident. And that's what's cool to see. And they know how to use them.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly, right? He's out there.
He's the OC.
Drawing it up.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys are playing. They knew what they were doing. Oregon struggled defensively to communicate. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Guys in motion, doing things that aren't normal, going formations into the boundary, and normally they go to the field, switching things up, a lot of motion, a lot of movement. That was tough. That was tough for them. And I thought Oregon was gonna perform. Obviously, I think everyone in the country thought Oregon was gonna perform.
I picked them to win the national championship. Clearly I was wrong.
Yeah. They were a favorite for me too. They were a favorite for me too. But now Ohio State was looking like, wow, y'all was rolling.
If they can, and the thing is, it's a complete effort, right? It's not just that they're coming out scoring points. I mean, of course, that puts the opposition in a bit of a shell shock, but the defense is balling out. 8 sacks on Dylan Gabriel last night. 8. Like, this is bad. What's going on here, man? Ohio State is clearly very upset about the way their regular season ended, and they are taking it out on the opposition. They've got Texas up next, a team that theoretically can match them physically and match them with speed, but Ohio State they are doing it, man. These guys are vicious. Oregon, Dylan Gabriel's gone. This is his final year. He played, I think, 6 years in college now. He's an all-time leading touchdown guy in collegiate history. So They've got Dante Moore. I don't know if he's going to be the starter next year or he goes into the portal. So here's a question. If you're Ohio State, do you reach out to Jalen Milroe now that his season is over? Try to get him up there? Not Ohio State. I'm sorry, Oregon.
I think you always recruit.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a program, you always recruit, and it's a matter of if you can get your guys there. You're saying Jalen Milroe from Bama?
Jalen Milroe from Bama, yeah.
I don't think he would leave just because of himself,
if the money's right,
character leave. And all that stuff. But again, like you said, if the money's right, it's this is a different landscape now.
Different landscape,
it's
yes,
a different landscape now.
Yes,
and anything can happen. And yeah, I would like to think he wouldn't leave because he seems like someone who loves the University of Alabama, loves the brotherhood behind it. That's his team. He feels he's probably got a better relationship with his coach after he's been under him for a year now. So I couldn't see him leaving. But I also know as a recruiter, it's open as soon as this thing's over.
That's right.
Recruiting. That's my job.
Yeah.
I'm always going after any top player that has the ability to move if they weren't happy where they were at the year before.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting to see what they do at the quarterback position next year, because I'm sure they want to continue to build on the success they've had in Dan Lanning's early tenure there. So they don't want to take a step
just go
back.
To the portal. There's thousands of guys in the portal.
Right.
You know
literally.
Literally thousands of guys in the portal. A lot of guys aren't going to get picked up, and I think people aren't talking about that. But there's thousands of players that could go in there. You put the tape on, you bring someone in, maybe you get someone in your recruiting class that you bring in a freshman who comes in and plays. Who knows? But we'll see.
Yes, we will. So very excited about that. See what Oregon does next. Okay, so are we in agreement here that if Ohio State continues like this, nobody can beat them?
Yeah,
the way they're playing right now, man. Jeez.
Yeah, because it's Ohio State, Texas. So boom, they win, and it'd be either Penn State or Notre Dame or Georgia.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Well, one at a time. All right. So before we open up the phone lines, take a quick call or two. Here's a question for you. Notre Dame, Georgia, Sugar Bowl. Where are you with this?
Notre Dame could do it, bro. I think Notre Dame has a great chance. Now, what I don't know is I haven't watched the backup quarterback for Georgia play enough or play when it's his team, when he knows he's a starter. Not, oh shoot, it's what quarter? What are we running? I'm coming in. Nah, he been preparing. They've been preparing like, no, you the guy. So that's what's going to be interesting. Georgia's kind of a wild card. They are beatable. They've looked beatable. But
they're
they
not
got
the
a
same
new team. They've had time to put in some new wrinkles. We'll see what happens. I think.
Yeah, I believe in Kirby Smart though.
Back and forth, kind of like, hey, they drove down 70-yard touchdown. Boom, they drove down 12-play drive, 12-play, 8-play. Like it might be one of those games where it comes down to 6 specific plays. That'll make or break it. Someone's gonna have to show up on special teams. The team that show up on special teams is going to be the team that wins the game.
That's a great point. A block kick, a missed field goal,
punt return. Texas ran that punt back. It was like, oh, this might be it.
Yeah, this might get ugly. That's right.
When they returned that, and he was like, uh-oh.
He was deuces. It's a call.
Yep.
All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to open up the phone lines real quick, take a couple, and then I'm going to get off here and go watch my Irish.
That's right.
219-2264. All right. I'm going to open up the phone lines here. If you want to call in real quick and give us your thoughts, let's do that. And then we will get out of here. Yeah, man, this is I'm so happy with the way this college football season has gone so far. And I'm just
me too
sad that it's about to be over.
Me too. And the playoff, I think the playoff system worked out how it needed to work out.
Yeah, for the most part,
I think there's enough people that are like, wow, like this is kind of cool. The beginning gets tricky. Who gets in, who doesn't get in. They're probably going to need a little bit more clarity on that. But again, that clarity comes from how the season progresses also. Right? If there's a clear favorite, boom, yeah, you're in. If there's not a clear favorite, okay, and then we got to play the strength of schedule game. We got to do all that stuff. But I think the concept that they have is super smart. It's what people have been thinking about ever since they fell in love with college basketball. Seeing the Cinderella story go on to the end. So We'll see.
Yeah, I think the only other thing they need to do is move away from the college, the conference champions getting automatic bye, and just do the top 4 getting automatic bye. Just leave it there. That'll make things a lot easier. That way, the seeding is the seeding, and it's not going to change. But looks like we're not going to get any calls here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end it right here, just in time for us to go watch the Irish and the Dogs. Enjoy the game, everybody. If you watching this on the replay, make sure you hit that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined, make sure you join the channel, and there will be some good stuff coming down the pike for that. All right, Ryan, thanks so much for joining, man. As always, man, appreciate you. And go enjoy the game, and I'll talk to you next time.
All right, out of here.
All right, we out. Peace.